Representative Zoe Zephyr said, "When I go to walk him," speaking of her son, "to school, that is not a lascivious display. That is not a fetish. That is my family." Family, it's your favorite queer radio personality, Anna Deshawn here, and this is Queer News, your favorite weekly news pod where race and sexuality meet politics, culture, and entertainment. Q crew, what's going on? I can never say thank you enough for your financial support of this podcast. Your giving allows this podcast to be sustainable. It covers the costs of our editor, okay? And family, we've brought on 3 new people in the last 45 days to make this podcast even more consistent, even better, okay? And we need more financial support. And so if you're listening to this, if you're watching this, and you have not joined the Q crew, please consider it. It starts as low as $5 a month. That's like a cup of coffee. Maybe it's your cup of tea, you know? But if you believe in the work we do, if you believe LGBTQ stories need to be amplified, if you love and respect how I report on the news, please join the Q crew. And let's say it together. A link is in the show notes. Family, our top story today is an update on Sam Nordquist. If you've been listening and watching the podcast for a month now, you know we've been reporting on Sam as there have been updates. And for those who may not be as familiar with the case, right? Sam was a Black trans man who met a young lady on the internet. He thought he loved her. He felt like they really cared about each other. But instead, he walked into a horrifying nightmare that he truly just couldn't escape. Now, last week, the prosecutors working on this case held a press conference to provide the latest updates. Now there are 7 people being charged with Sam's murder. If you remember, before there was only 5. Now there are 7. And the details of what Sam went through just get worse and worse. I'm actually going to read off some of the details that were provided by the investigation team. They're reporting that these 7 people, they would beat him. They would feed him feces. They would feed him urine, tobacco juice. They would pour bleach on him and duct tape him. They starved him. They sexually assaulted him with multiple random objects. They even forced 2 children, the ages of 7 and 12, to participate in Sam's torture. Now, with all of this new information, the charges have changed and they have stacked, okay? They are now being charged with first-degree murder. They're being charged with second-degree murder. They're being charged with 2 counts of kidnapping, conspiracy, and 2 counts of endangering the welfare of a child. Then 4 of the 7 of them will also be charged with aggravated sexual abuse. Now, one thing I found interesting is that they will not be charging them with a hate crime. Okay, this will not be a hate crime charge. And they said they're not doing this because the charges that they have placed have harsher penalties. The county assistant district attorney, Kelly Wolford, she said this. She said, "A hate crime would make this charge about Sam's gender or about Sam's race. And it's so much bigger." She goes on to say, "To limit us to a hate crime would be an injustice to Sam. Sam deserves to have his story told in its entirety." So adding hate crime on top of everything else, it doesn't really fit. Not to mention, the people who inflicted this harm also identified as LGBTQ. So there's that. And let me just say this too. I'm just mad that nobody else reported it. All of this took place in a motel in upstate New York. When bad things are happening, people change their patterns. There are things that aren't quite the same. And this is the worst case of bystander apathy. Somebody had a feeling that something wasn't right. And given this was a small town, Sam was new. Somebody noticed that Sam was there and that Sam eventually wasn't there. But they didn't say anything. Now, I'm going to keep following the story as always. And that's what's really beautiful about this podcast is that I get to focus on queer stuff all the time. I don't need to move on to another news story. I don't need that. What I need to do is continue to report and provide updates about the things that matter most to us. That's why queer news is needed, in my humble opinion. Now, next up in political news, we got some good news. Can you believe that? We got some good news. Boom, 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 boom. Boom, 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 boom. That's right. In Montana, 2 anti-trans bills have been defeated. Yes, they have. And it's not a miracle. It's not magic. It has been hard work. You've got 2 trans representatives in the House in Montana, Representative Zoe Zephyr and Representative S.J. Howe. And both of them stood up on the House floor against both of these bills. And you know what happened? Republicans crossed the aisle. Republicans in Montana voted alongside Democrats. Ooh, Chile, let me tell you more about what happened. So the one bill, HB 675, would have banned drag performances and pride parades. Then bill HB 754, that would have literally taken trans kids from their parents. Now, for the ridiculous drag ban, another piece of this is that they would have also given parents the power to sue drag performers. Yeah, people would have been able to sue drag performers for up to $5,000. This is not even rational. Representative Zoe Zephyr stood on the House floor and gave her testimony, okay? And Republicans lost this vote 45 to 55. And for context, in the Montana House, it's controlled by Republicans. There are 58 Republicans and 42 Democrats. And they lost this vote 44 to 55. The House Speaker, who's a Republican, said this: transgenderism is a fetish based on cross-dressing. Now, in response to this, Representative Zoe Zephyr said, when I go to walk him, speaking of her son, to school, that is not a lascivious display. That is not a fetish. That is my family. Come on. I mean, she just spoke from her heart, and it worked. And she wasn't the only one. A Republican colleague, Representative Sherry Esmond, okay, spoke up too. She said so much, but I just want to share some lines, okay, because it's powerful. She said, everybody in here talks about how important parental rights are. I want to tell you, in addition to parental rights, parental responsibility is also important. And if you can't trust a decent parent to decide where and when their kids should see what, then we have a bigger problem. She went on to say, trust the parents to do what's right and stop these crazy bills that are a waste of time. They're a waste of energy. We should be working on property tax relief and not doing this sort of business on the floor of this house and having to even talk about this. Do you know, after the speeches, 13 Republicans flipped their vote, flipped it, and voted against the bill. And let me tell you, Montana was on fire that day, okay, because that wasn't it, right? We talked about 2 bills. The second anti-trans bill that went up, Representative S.J. Howe said this about a bill that would actually take trans kids out of their homes, right? They said, I stand to oppose this bill. When a state intervenes to remove a child from their family, that is one of the most serious and weighty responsibilities that the state has. That is not something to be taken lightly. Every time a child is removed from their family, it's a tragedy. Sometimes a necessary tragedy, but a tragedy nonetheless. This bill does not come close to the seriousness, okay, to the seriousness with which those decisions should be contemplated. They went on to say, put yourself in the shoes of a CPS worker who is confronted with a young person, 15 years old maybe, who was happy, healthy, living in a stable home with loving parents, who is supported and has their needs met. And they are supposed to remove that child from their home and put them in the care of the state. We should absolutely not be doing that. Now, when that bill went for a vote, 29 Republicans voted against it. 29. Now, if you remember earlier in the podcast, I mentioned there were 58 Republicans in the House. So literally half of them voted against their own party. When does that happen? When was the last time you can remember a Republican House, Senate voting against their own? Come on, Montana. I want to say thank you to Representative Zoe Zephyr for her courage, her continued leadership in Montana. Big thank you to Representative S.J. Howe, yes, for standing up for the people, okay? I want to thank all the Republicans who decided to have a backbone and say no to the ridiculousness of all of this, okay? And I also want to say thank you to the activists and the advocates who are on the ground every single day in Montana, reminding people, right, that our trans siblings are human beings, not just policies. And in more culture and entertainment news this week, family, what are we going to do with MSNBC? I mean, this is a valid question. What are we going to do with them? Okay. Now, just a couple of weeks ago, they canceled one of my very favorites, Joanne Reed and the Read Out. Yes. Producers have been fired. Other shows have been canceled, only for them to announce that there's a new show coming to the network at MSNBC called The Weekend. And it is going to be co-hosted by a trio, but two of them are Black gay men. Now, this is the first time that two Black gay men will be co-hosting a new show on cable television. MSNBC is literally making LGBTQ history, okay? How can we not celebrate that? How can we not support it? By watching. Child. Can I tell y'all how I was not giving them no more ratings? And now we got this. I can't be mad at it. John Capehart and Eugene Daniels will be the two co-hosts on this new show. And it's well-deserved. I mean, both their resumes read, okay? You just keep reading. And you just keep reading. John has been a longtime staple at MSNBC. And let's be clear, he is a Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist. And we just going to manifest, okay? Because that is on my vision board that one day I, too, will be a Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist. That sounds sweet. It means you've done some good in the world, okay? Then you have Eugene Daniels. He's newer to the scene, but can I tell y'all how respected he is, okay? He was just elected president of the White House Correspondents Association. And before becoming the new senior Washington correspondent for MSNBC, the chief playbook correspondent and White House correspondent at Politico, okay? Now, the trio is rounded out by Jackie Almany, right? She's been at the Washington Post for 6 years covering the White House. They're going to be on every weekend for 3 hours from 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. Eastern on Saturday and Sunday. And the show is going to kick off in late April. I guess I'll be watching. Yeah. Family, you know what time it is. It's time for Anna's Got a Word, because Anna's always got a word. And the word this week is being inspired by my latest Cube vlog, where I just talk about getting our latest no. So if you've been listening to this, if you know a little bit about me, you know I started a company called The Cube, Qube, and it's a podcast company. I'm looking to match people up to find and discover their next favorite podcast. I have pitched VCs over and over again. I just get no after no after no. We've only gotten one yes, okay? And I just want to tell y'all, never stop because of a no. Never stop because you've been rejected by something or someone or an entity. Let me tell you, sometimes people can't see the vision. Sometimes people just don't get it. And that just means that they weren't your person. That wasn't the entity. That wasn't the time. No matter how bad I wanted to be the time, okay? No matter how bad I want to see this dream become a reality and how bad we could have used that investment. For some reason, God and the universe said, not right now. Anna, this ain't the one. You think you want it, but you don't. And let me tell you how bad I want it. But I have learned not to get too high and not to get too low. I definitely was sad, disappointed, gave myself 24 hours. And if you're listening to this and you got a dream that you're looking to make into a reality and you keep getting no's, give yourself 24 hours and then bounce back. You've been given a vision, make it come to life. Okay? Don't give up. Don't give up on your dream. Make it happen, okay? And when things are ready, they will align so beautifully. It'll be like a symphony. All the layers, all the pieces will just fall into place. This is what I'm speaking into my life, and I'm going to speak it into yours, okay? Now, I'll see y'all next week, all right?